It's great to be here with you, and particularly to be here with the Asia Society. And to you, Doug, Chairman of the Asia Society of Australia, and to the CEO, Philippe Ivanov, I want to thank you for the invitation, for being here today. I also want to acknowledge your event partner, Bloomberg, and for this very timely Asia briefing in advance of what you've described and we all know as the summit seizing. And of course, my friend and my colleague who's doing an outstanding job, the Foreign Minister Marise Payne, who's served in many senior portfolios herself over the years, and most recently before this as Minister for Defence. Now, since its foundation more than 20 years ago, the Asia Society of Australia has provided a unique forum for bringing together those with a keen interest in Australia's engagement with Asia. And today, as I head into my first annual summit season as Prime Minister, I'd like to just share with you some of my perspectives on my approach to Australia's engagement, of course with our region, but a little more broadly than that as well. Our foreign policy defines what we believe as Australians about the world and our place in it. It must speak of our character and our values, what we stand for, what we believe in, and if need be, what we'll defend. And this is what guides our national interest. I fear foreign policy these days is a little too often being accessed through a very narrow transactional lens. Taking an overly transactional approach to foreign policy and how we define our national interests, I believe, can sell us short. If we allow such an approach to compromise our beliefs, we let ourselves down and we stop speaking with an Australian voice. We are more than the sum of our deals when it comes to foreign and trade policy. We are better than that. We are more than that. So what are those beliefs that I consider guide our interests as a proud nation? We believe that the path to peace and liberty demands the pursuit of prosperity through private capital, the right to own property, entrepreneurialism, free and open markets. This is actually what lifts people out of poverty. We believe that acceptance should not be determined by race or religion in this country. Rather, we accept people at their word and we judge them by their actions. We believe in freedom of speech, of thought, of association, and indeed religion. We believe in peaceful, liberal democracy, the rule of law, the separation of powers, racial and gender equality, where every citizen has choice and opportunity to follow their own paths and their own dreams. A fair go for those who have a go is how I've described it in terms of what fairness means in Australia. We believe in the limits of government because free peoples are the best foundation to show mutual respect to all. And we believe in standing by our mates, side by side with nations that believe the things that we do. From the United Kingdom and the democracies of Europe to the United States and Canada, from the State of Israel to the city-state of Singapore, from Japan and South Korea and North Asia to New Zealand across the ditch. We believe in being good neighbours, regardless of whether there are differences in how we see the world and what we believe, and how we run our respective societies. We also believe this should be a two-way street. We respect their sovereignty and the right to run their own show. We simply ask for no more than that in return. That our views and beliefs, the decisions that we make, the questions we ask and ponder, and how we go about answering those questions and making those decisions is also respected. Because when we do this, when we can come together and engage on our common interests for the mutual benefit of our peoples, then we achieve a great deal, regardless of the differences that will always be there. What we advocate for our region and the world are the same things that drive us here at home. Now, I've been pretty clear about those domestic priorities, keeping our economy strong to guarantee the essentials that Australians rely on, keeping Australians safe and keeping us together. We are a very successful harmonious, cohesive society. We are the most, I would argue, successful immigration country on earth. Prosperity, security, unity. Our international agenda is built on these themes and these strong domestic foundations, and these were reflected in the key themes of the Foreign Policy White Paper released last year. Let's talk about some of those things. The tide of history is moving to our doorstep, and we can't pretend this tide of change happens seamlessly or smoothly. As economic power shifts, it's unsurprising that nations will seek to play a bigger strategic role in our region. China, in particular, is exercising unprecedented influence in the Indo-Pacific. It's a simple fact. At the same time, many of our partners globally, from our most important partner and ally in the United States to others in Europe and elsewhere, they are debating the value of free trade and worry about the costs and risks of their global commitments. Now, we can't wish away these debates and these challenges. The political impacts are profound, and we just have to commit to work through them, consistent with our beliefs. We are committed to ensuring the peaceful evolution of our own region in these times. It will take the right combination of both pragmatism and principle, and as always, playing to our strengths. Australia's economy is growing. Our country is confident. Our budget position as a nation is getting stronger and stronger. Our continued success depends on being, as it always has, open to trade and investment. We don't get rich selling stuff to ourselves. Just as we need capital and other inputs to build our economy, we need open markets and transparent rules. Trade accounts for 1 in 5 Australian jobs and employs over 2.2 million Australians. We have skills and resources in abundance that the rest of the world wants and envies, and we are a reliable partner. Open markets for services give Australian consumers increased choice, affordable choice, and provides businesses with access to a wider range of skills and expertise so we can realise our potential. It's estimated that annual incomes for the average Australian family are now 8,500 higher thanks to 30 years of trade liberalisation. Because of it, not instead of it. Also, Asia's unprecedented growth over the past 3 decades, as the Asia Society well knows, transformed not just Asia, but the entire globe. There are now 1 billion fewer people living in extreme poverty than there were in 1990, and much of that is due to growth in our own region. Now, that prosperity has been built on a web of institutions and rules that supported economic openness and curbed beggar thy neighbour trade barriers. The World Trade Organisation has long been at the heart of this system. Its rules limit arbitrary trade restrictions and the use of unilateral trade measures so we can all trade with confidence and invest with confidence. Now, no system is perfect, and we acknowledge that frustrations have been growing with the WTO's rulemaking, transparency and disputes functions. And many members have fair income legitimate concerns about the impact of policies such as industrial subsidies, which lead to overproduction. Australia has been calling out similar practices for decades in relation to agriculture. Equally, there are valid concerns about the protection of intellectual property and the rules governing the involvement of government entities in markets. These are also fair income issues. In responding, our best tool is the negotiating table, not trade barriers and increased tariffs. We will support efforts to improve and strengthen the WTO, recognising some of the legitimate frustrations of the United States and other countries. We will also persist with a pragmatic trade agenda, pursuing trade liberalisation wherever possible. And nothing demonstrates that more clearly, judging us on our actions, than the TPP-11, which Australia ratified just yesterday. With 6 countries now on board, the agreement will kick in this year and Australia will get immediate tariff cuts from the 30th of December. Now, this agreement will give our businesses and farmers greater access to 500 million more customers. Across the board, we are pursuing trade opportunities wherever we can. Sit still long enough and the Trade Minister will seek to do a deal with you. Looking forward, we have a significant FTA agenda, including our comprehensive economic partnership agreement with Indonesia, advancing negotiations on the regional comprehensive economic partnership with ASEAN and other key regional economies, and with the EU, and of course post-Brexit with the UK. This agenda is built on a record of achievement, including 3 free trade agreements our government has signed with China, Japan and South Korea that continue to deliver huge gains for companies on both sides of the deal. We are also looking to the longer term, and in particular, we want to enhance our partnership with India. The foundations are already very strong. We share values, a commitment to democratic institutions, enormous goodwill, with strong relationships between our people that go well beyond cuisine and cricket. And we share a common strategic outlook. And the time is right to step up our efforts, and we welcome the India Economic Strategy to 2035, authored by the former High Commissioner to India and Head of DFAT, Peter Varghese. It's the first step towards a longer-term investment that cements India in the front rank of Australia's partnerships. And I will have a lot more to say about that when the President of India visits Australia in a few weeks' time. Now, economic security alone, though, is not enough. Prosperity requires security. Security is a common endeavour with a common dividend for those who pursue it. At forthcoming meetings, I will be advancing our work with others to tackle terrorism and violent extremism, cybercrime, people smuggling and nuclear proliferation. I will discuss how, even as the prospect of peace on the Korean Peninsula appears to be improving, we need to maintain maximum pressure on the DPRK to ensure the complete, verifiable and irreversible denuclearisation of the Korean Peninsula. I will reiterate Australia's enduring interest in ensuring that freedom of navigation and overflight are respected by all states, large and small. In all of these matters, the United States remains vital to the sort of region we want to see. The alliance with the United States is a choice we make, Australians make, about how best to pursue our security interests. And US economic engagement is as essential to regional stability and prosperity as its security capabilities and network of alliances. Australia also has vitally important relationships with China. Trade, tourism, educational exchanges are at record highs, beyond what we all hoped or imagined many years ago. Australia values these and honours these tens of thousands of daily interactions between our peoples, which continue to expand. And we are committed to deepening our comprehensive strategic partnership with China. And I look forward to discussing how we can continue to do that with China's leaders later this month through the course of the summits. Now, of course, China is not alone in being a force for change in our world, but China is the country that is most changing the balance of power, sometimes in ways that challenge US interests. Inevitably, in the period ahead, we will be navigating a higher degree of US-China strategic competition. A strong America, carefully engaged in the affairs of our region, we believe is consistent with our national interests. Australia does not seek a free ride when it comes to regional security and prosperity. We support the strongest possible US political, security and economic management in the Indo-Pacific in tangible ways, including by lifting our defence spending. And at the same time, it is important that US-China relations do not become defined by confrontation. And wherever we can assist to de-escalate these issues, then we shall seek to do so in the interests of our relationship with both of these key partners. There must remain always room for dialogue and cooperation. The period ahead will at times be testing, but I am confident in our ability to navigate it as we always have. And once again, our values and beliefs, as I outline them, will guide us in that path. Australia has also always sought to be a citizen that plays its part in the broader world, and this has been particularly true in the Middle East. From the Great War a century ago to Iraq and Afghanistan more recently, we have turned up. We've played our role, we've done our share, and we have paid great prices through great sacrifices. We have done this because we believe it is right, being true to our values and our principles. This is always in our national interest. Our support for Israel and our passionate desire for the success of a two-state solution in the Middle East is based on these same beliefs and a desire for a lasting peace, and that will continue to drive our policy thinking. Closer to home, Australia will continue to deepen cooperation with Japan, Indonesia, India and the Republic of Korea to help forge a balance in our region that supports openness and ensures the rights of all states are protected. And I'm looking forward to warmly welcoming Japanese Prime Minister Abe to Australia soon. The strength of our relationships with these democracies will advance our interests, however the regional order evolves in the future. Now, it was no accident that my first international visit as Prime Minister was to Jakarta. This has become something of an Australian tradition for Prime Ministers. Australia has a vital partnership with Indonesia. Indonesia is one of democracy's greatest success stories in recent times, indeed in my lifetime. They are an outstanding democratic success. It is a relationship that is obviously compelled by geography, but nurtured by deep mutual respect, both in understanding of our differences, appreciating our common goals and interests, and indeed our values. I look forward to meeting President Widodo again soon to extend our achievements in the relationship we have secured to date. Now, ASEAN has played a critical role in supporting regional stability and prosperity and is at the centre of regional architecture. Australia's vision of the Indo-Pacific has ASEAN at its very heart. ASEAN's success is fundamental to the interests of all the main players in the Indo-Pacific, including Australia. And Australia's commitment to ASEAN was made clear at the Special Summit in March this year and through the Sydney Declaration, which set out an ambitious agenda to deepen our cooperation. I will be advancing that agenda at an informal summit with ASEAN leaders soon in areas such as counter-terrorism, infrastructure and maritime cooperation. And I'll be discussing opportunities to work more closely together on transnational crime, to scale up cooperation on cyber issues and to strengthen our defence engagement. Now, just as important as the stability, prosperity and openness of Southeast Asia is our engagement with our neighbours and family in the Pacific. As family, we deal with each other openly and honestly, and above all, with respect. But like all families, sometimes we take each other for granted. The government I lead is committed to the Pacific as one of my highest foreign policy priorities, because this is where we live. This is a relationship that I want to see rise to a new level of respect, of partnership, of familiarity and appreciation. In short, I want us to do better. I want to set right how we engage with our Pacific family, our vavali, our whānau. I will not be taking our Pacific family for granted. My first meetings with foreign leaders in Australia were the Prime Ministers of the Solomon Islands and Fiji, and this afternoon I'll meet with Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister O'Neill. I'm also looking forward to meeting my Pacific counterparts after APEC in Port Moresby at a barbecue at the residence. APEC will be a great opportunity for our closest neighbours to tell its story to the world, and I know it'll be a very important moment for the people of Papua New Guinea. We'll work more closely than ever with the Pacific Islands on those issues of greatest concern to them, including climate solutions and disaster resilience, and we will keep the international commitments we have made in these areas. We are building labour mobility opportunities for Pacific countries in Australia and ensuring Pacific countries will always take precedence in addressing those needs. Always. We're providing Australia Award scholarships to the Pacific, 1,474 last year alone. We're majority funding undersea cables to PNG and the Solomon Islands, including a domestic network in the Solomons, which will deliver faster, cheaper and more reliable communications. And we want to continue working with others, traditional partners like New Zealand and the United States, as well as newer ones such as China, to ensure our engagement strengthens the common goal of enhancing sustainable economic development and the well-being of our Pacific friends and family. I want to strengthen our engagement with the Pacific for the Pacific's sake, because this is our home. We will build on the BOI, Pacific Regional Security Declaration, to drive greater security cooperation and build greater economic linkages and strengthen the integration of our economies. We're also working to increase safety and security, delivering bigger and more capable patrol boats and aerial surveillance and sharing more information to help the Pacific stop drug trafficking, people smuggling and illegal fishing, which undercuts and undermines their economic futures. And the new Australia Pacific Security College will train the next generation of security officials. We have negotiated a bilateral security agreement with the Solomon Islands, and we are working with Fiji to develop the Blackrock Regional Peacekeeping and Disaster Training Hub. As well, we have taken steps with Vanuatu to further strengthen our partnership, including on security. And later this afternoon, my friend and partner, the Prime Minister Peter O'Neill of Papua New Guinea, and I will formally commit to a joint initiative to develop the Lombram base on Manus Island. We will also confirm a new long-term police partnership and commit to new annual leaders' meetings recognising the importance of each country to each other. And like all families, we are strongest when we listen to each other and we stand with each other and show respect. At a time of change, uncertainty and strategic competition, Australia will need to act with even greater purpose and conviction. We also need to think about how our national power can be applied to protect and advance our interests. This begins with our substantial investments in building a more capable, agile and potent Australian Defence Force. Over the past 5 years, our government has been strengthening the Australian Defence Force. Our Defence White Paper is fully funded and outlines how we will invest $200 billion in Australia's Defence Force capability over the next 10 years. Since our election in 2013, our government committed and has set about restoring our defence spending to 2% of GDP. And we will achieve this 3 years ahead of time in 2020-21. But it hasn't been easy. While reluctant to strike a partisan note in this presentation, it must be observed that while the Labor opposition now say they support these goals, when they had the responsibility, defence spending as a share of our economy fell to the lowest level since prior to the Second World War, with not one naval ship commissioned during their term of administration. Now, we're undertaking the largest regeneration of the Royal Australian Navy since the Second World War, including the doubling of our future submarine fleet, a new fleet of 9 frigates and a new fleet of 12 offshore patrol vessels to ensure our borders remain secure. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program will give the Air Force unprecedented air capability to combat future threats. And the Army has been backed in with the new armoured reconnaissance vehicles and new weapons, as well as new body armour and night fighting equipment. All of this is being done because the best way to keep Australians safe is to give the best capability to the men and women of our ADF, and we thank them for their service. In conclusion, our influence internationally is built on our strength at home, on our democracy, and on our open society that binds us all together, on our belief in freedom and the fair go. And it's built on a strong economy that enables us to fulfil our promise to the Australian people when it comes to keeping them safe. I go into this summit season to the East Asia Summit in Singapore, to APEC and PNG, and to the G20 in Buenos Aires, clear-eyed about what Australians believe, what we stand for, and ready to advance Australia's case. While we live on an island, the best one I reckon, we can't afford to have an island mentality. We embrace free trade, global engagement, and an international system where we agree to rules, stick to them, and honour our commitments. We embrace an open, stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific region because shrinking into ourselves never, ever works. If we want to keep our economy strong, if we want to keep Australians safe, and if we want to stay united as a community, cohesive, of course we must continue to engage with the world and seize the opportunities presented with both hands, based on the beliefs and values that have always underpinned our success. Thank you very much for your attention.